Chapter 2805, Fame Shakes Dragonheart City. What did you say? Chapter 2805, Fame Shakes Dragonheart City. What did you say? Black Flame killed a Tier 4 NPC and even got Bloodoath imprisoned for 15 days. When the various guilds and adventurer teams operating in Dragonheart City heard of Shifeng's miraculous feat, they were thunderstruck. They repeatedly pressed the reporting personnel for confirmation regarding the validity of this information. As if having expected such a reaction, the reporting personnel promptly sent a battle video of Shifeng killing Sabrid to their respective superiors, as well as videos of Shifeng killing 3 of Warblood's peak experts right in front of Bloodoath and of NPC soldiers dragging Bloodoath off to prison. Dragonheart City, Bloodstone Bar, a group of level 123+, Tier 3 experts had gathered in this bar. Of the group, even the weakest person was at the refinement realm standard. There were also more than a dozen peak experts and 4 apex experts. Meanwhile, seated at the head of this group was none other than Elder Wu, one of 13 Thrones' founders. Are you sure this information is correct? Elder Wu couldn't help feeling skeptical as he read the report from a woman shrouded in a layer of black mist. This was because 1,000 Lives' report was simply too astonishing. After all, the reason their group was currently operating so secretively was Warblood. Nevertheless, Elder Wu was being told that Warblood was finished. Moreover, its destruction was due entirely to Zero Wing's guild leader, Black Flame. How could he possibly believe this? It is 100% true. Many powers already have designs on Warblood's territory. If not for Warblood still retaining some contact with Secret Hand, they would have most likely taken action already, 1,000 Lives insisted in a determined tone. Moreover, according to the information I collected, Heaven's Blade appears to have formed a close relationship with Black Flame. If Zero Wing has Heaven's Blade's full support, I'm afraid it won't be long before Zero Wing occupies a significant portion of Dragonheart City's various resources. What is Black Flame thinking? He actually has the leisure to come to Dragonheart City. Is he not worried about the deteriorating situation over at the Twin Towers Kingdom? Elder Wu, who wore a somewhat haggard expression, was surprised by 1,000 Lives' words. Simultaneously, he was confused as to how Shifeng had grown so terrifying this rapidly. The fact that Shifeng had killed a Tier 4 NPC without any repercussions and imprisoned Bloodoath with just a few words proved that he already stood at the top of Dragonheart City in terms of status. He was now an existence that Dragonheart City's various powers had to look up to. Yet, according to Elder Wu's information, Zero Wing's operations over at the Twin Towers Kingdom were in dire straits. At this stage of the game, complete Tier 3 legacies were of utmost importance to the various superpowers. These legacies would allow them to go up against the NPC forces. Hence, over 20 superpowers were currently harassing Zero Wing's operations in the Twin Towers Kingdom with peak experts every day. While these superpowers were going up against the alliance of Zero Wing, Unyielding Soul, and Crimson Emperor at Sky Spring City, they had also dispatched many members to head to the Secret Covenant Tower from the neighboring NPC cities. To prevent these players from flooding into the Secret Covenant Tower, Zero Wing's alliance had stationed a large number of personnel on the routes to the tower. Thus far, battles between both sides involving over 100,000 players had already occurred 5 times, while battles involving several tens of thousands of players had occurred more than 20 times. In the most recent battle, Starlink and Miracle had even joined in the fray and dispatched a total of 4 Tier 4 experts. Fortunately, Zero Wing's side had dispatched 3 Tier 4 experts to counter. One of them was the commander of Zero Wing's main force, Fire Dance, one was Unyielding Soul's vice-guild leader Unyielding Heart, and one was Crimson Emperor's vice-guild leader Illusory Words. As for Black Flame, he was nowhere to be seen. In regard to this situation, everyone was confused as to why Black Flame sat out this battle. This battle had thoroughly shaken the entire God's Domain. It was the first one involving multiple Tier 4 experts since God's Domain's launch. By the end of this battle, a large portion of the glacial lake plain, where the conflict took place, had been reduced to a barren wasteland. Although the fight had ended in Zero Wing's victory, if not for Zero Wing's powerful war weapons, such as the Crimson Dragon flying ships, combat puppets, and advanced barriers, the outcome would have been different. Moreover, the increasing rampancy of NPC forces had forced the various superpowers to conserve a significant portion of their forces. However, Zero Wing, Unyielding Soul, and Crimson Emperor were no longer in a good state. The three guilds had suffered tremendous losses due to the protracted war. This was especially true for Zero Wing. After all, unlike Unyielding Soul and Crimson Emperor, Zero Wing had no background to rely on whatsoever. Knowing this, the various superpowers had also put in a lot of effort to whittle Zero Wing to death as quickly as possible. The actions the various superpowers took included poaching Zero Wing's experts and cutting off Zero Wing's income sources. Zero Wing's loss of income sources in the real world had put the guild in an especially difficult position. Most importantly, the various superpowers had also blocked Zero Wing's equipment and material sources. Although it wasn't a complete embargo, the various superpowers had jacked up the prices of equipment and materials to absurd levels. Now, just producing a piece of level 120 mysterious iron equipment cost 30 gold coins. If it were before, 30 gold would already have been more than enough to produce a piece of level 120 secret silver equipment. In addition, the various superpowers also purchased all of the level 110 plus secret silver equipment and above from the market, leaving nothing for Zero Wing, Unyielding Soul, and Crimson Emperor. After the many battles fought, the equipment stockpile of the three guilds should already be bottoming out. Meanwhile, without good weapons and equipment, how were their members supposed to fight? A player fully equipped in secret silver equipment would have more than a 20% advantage in basic attributes over a player fully equipped in mysterious iron equipment. Needless to say, the gap with players fully equipped in fine gold equipment would be even greater. Moreover, without proper weapons and equipment, the three guilds' members would also have more difficulty grinding in the secret Covenant Tower. At this time, Thousand Lives suddenly received a message from one of her subordinates. After reading it, she said, "I just received insider information from War Blood. It seems Black Flame's actions have affected even Secret Hand's control over the World Tower, so Secret Hand plans to teach Black Flame a lesson. However, since Secret Hand can't do anything against him on Dragonheart Island, it plans on partnering with Starlink to wipe out Zero Wing's forces in the Twin Towers Kingdom." Interesting. Black Flame really knows how to cause trouble. However, this is also a good opportunity for 13 Thrones. A good opportunity. Thousand Lives parroted, confused by Elder Wu's words. Looking at Thousand Lives and the male ranger standing beside her, Elder Wu said, "Thousand, Rain, you two follow me. Everyone else, continue resting here and wait for our return." "Yes, sir," everyone responded respectfully. Afterward, Elder Wu secretly left the Bloodstone Bar together with Thousand Lives and Modern Rain. "Elder Wu, where are we going? Shouldn't we be heading to the fourth underground floor as planned?" Thousand Lives asked curiously as she looked at the pleasantly smiling Elder Wu. "We won't be going there for now. We have something more important to do," Elder Wu replied. "Something more important?" Having thought of something, Thousand Lives asked in surprise, "Are we going to partner with Zero Wing?" "Partner?" Shaking his head, Elder Wu said, "We don't need to partner with Zero Wing. We will just be giving Zero Wing an opportunity to defend the secret Covenant Tower." "Defend the secret Covenant Tower? How is that possible?" Thousand Lives couldn't help doubting Elder Wu's words. It might be fine if Starlink and the various superpowers were the only ones targeting Zero Wing. However, the situation was different now that the Secret Hand Association had joined the fray. At that time, who knew how many Tier 4 NPCs the association would send to deal with Zero Wing? With the forces Zero Wing currently had in the Twin Towers Kingdom, defending the secret Covenant Tower would be utterly impossible. Seeing Thousand Lives' doubt, Elder Wu smiled and asked, "But what if Zero Wing has a city building order? Elder Wu, do you plan on selling that city building order to Zero Wing?" Realization immediately dawned upon Thousand Lives. The city building order was an incredibly rare item. Thus far, even 13 Thrones had managed to acquire only 2. And as the guild had already used one of these 2 orders, it only had 1 left. With the city building order, players could construct a guild city in any kingdom or empire they wished. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. If Zero Wing could establish a guild city right beside the secret Covenant Tower, then its ability to control the tower would increase significantly. Combined with its Tier 4 combatants, Zero Wing would have a much better chance of defending the tower. Whether I sell it or not will depend on Zero Wing's sincerity, Elder Wu said, smiling. Upon hearing Elder Wu's words, Thousand Lives shook her head and smiled. At the same time, she also pitied Shifeng slightly. Since Elder Wu grasped Zero Wing's lifeline, he would definitely take a huge bite out of Zero Wing. This was especially true now that Shifeng stood at the apex of Dragonheart City. Elder Wu, according to our investigation, Black Flame is currently inside that Wanderer's shop, Modern Rain said as he pointed at a tattered, 3-story shop some distance ahead. Good. We'll go meet with guild leader Black Flame now. Elder Wu nodded. He then made his way to the Wanderer's shop together with Thousand Lives and Modern Rain. Chapter 2806, The Astonishing Zero Wing. Chapter 2806, The Astonishing Zero Wing. Dragonheart City, Wanderer's shop. When Elder Wu's group of 3 entered the shop, a magnificent sight instantly entered their eyes. The scenery within the shop was a stark contrast to its dilapidated facade. What's going on here? Thousand Lives was astonished as she inspected the space within the building. This place looks completely different from the last time I visited. On her previous visits to the Wanderer's shop, the building's interior had looked as dilapidated as its exterior. And while the shop sold excellent items, everything here was absurdly priced. If one weren't in a hurry to obtain a specific item, one wouldn't come here to shop. Now, not only had the shop's interior become splendid, but the shop's area had also expanded from a cramped room to half a basketball court. The number of items on display had doubled, and the item quality was drastically better. Now, almost everything on display was a precious treasure. Tier 3 magic scrolls, master potions, alchemy gold. The alchemy gold, in particular, was a treasure of alchemy. It could increase not only the success rate of forging by 15% but also the basic attributes of the forged item by 10%. Moreover, it was even effective in the production of epic weapons and equipment. However, alchemy gold was impossible to find on the market. Players could obtain it only from ancient ruins. Alchemy gold was even rarer than epic items. Nevertheless, the Wanderer's shop had a total of 10 ingots of alchemy gold for sale. Moreover, they were only on the first floor right now. The Wanderer's shop had 3 floors, and the value of the products sold in the shop increased with each subsequent floor. In other words, the products on the first floor were the lowest in quality. Rain, take a look around afterward. If you see anything we need, buy it. Elder Wu instructed Modern Rain. When he saw the items sold in the shop, even he was moved. The items sold here were indeed exceedingly expensive, with the cheapest item priced at 20 ancient gold and valuable items like the alchemy gold priced at 1,000 ancient gold. However, most of the items sold here were nigh impossible to purchase in the outside world. Besides, 13 Thrones was in urgent need of items such as alchemy gold. After the major system update, monsters became much more difficult to deal with. Previously, Tier 3 teams could cope with Grand Lord ranked monsters, even with just fine gold weapons and equipment. Now, however, Tier 3 teams needed to be fully equipped in dark gold weapons and equipment. Moreover, the team's MT would need to have 2 or 3 pieces of epic equipment. Otherwise, tanking a Grand Lord would be incredibly tough without help. Needless to say, the requirements for raiding mythic monsters were even higher. Players could no longer rely on just their combat standards to defeat powerful monsters. They also needed epic weapons and equipment to support them. Otherwise, the benefits of exploring level 120+ maps weren't worth the cost. Meanwhile, alchemy gold increased the success rate of producing epic weapons and equipment. In the hands of an advanced master forger, success was almost guaranteed. Moreover, the produced item would also have a 10% boost to its basic attributes. Yes, sir. Modern Rain nodded after snapping out of his daze. Elder Wu's group proceeded to the second floor. And upon seeing the items displayed there, Modern Rain very nearly drooled. This was because the second floor actually sold epic items. Although these epic items weren't weapons or equipment, they were still incredibly rare and useful. Confinement Crystal, Epic Consumable, seals a 2,000-yard radius and lowers the basic attributes of all enemies within the magic array by 40%, 25% for Tier 4, for 2 hours. Wind Manipulating Rope, Epic Item, increases the movement speed of land mounts by 15% and flying mounts by 25%. The display of epic items was simply dizzying. With a single glance, they discovered at least 60 epic items. What rendered them speechless were the prices. Even the cheapest epic item cost 1,500 ancient gold. However, they had to admit that these epic items were all things the various powers desired. Aside from epic items, all sorts of excellent tools required by lifestyle players were also available, such as a set of dark gold alchemy tools. The only problem was that the set cost 5,000 ancient gold. After Elder Wu and the others browsed through the items sold on the second floor, they felt as if they had just walked into a treasure house. Every item on sale here moved their hearts. Unfortunately, the more astonishing an item was, the more astonishing its price was. With just the 60,000 ancient gold they had on hand, they could purchase only a few items from this floor. Just as Elder Wu's group was about to head to the third floor to take a look, a lithe figure suddenly blocked their way. The frightening aura this person exuded instantly subjected Elder Wu and the others to powerful pressure. No outsiders are allowed beyond this point, Yu Luo said softly to Elder Wu's group. If you wish to shop here, you can do so only on the first and second floors. When Thousand Lives and Modern Rain saw Yu Luo, they couldn't help doubting their eyes. Tier 4. A bona fide Tier 4 cleric. Both Thousand Lives and Modern Rain recognized Yu Luo. After all, Yu Luo had been one of Heaven's Blade's team leaders. Simultaneously, she was one of the few peak experts operating on Dragonheart Island. Only, they never thought that Yu Luo would get promoted to Tier 4 already. After all, anyone capable of getting promoted to Tier 4 at this stage of the game had the full support of an entire guild. Yet, Yu Luo, a cleric who had gone missing 1 month ago, had actually reappeared now as a Tier 4 cleric. This was simply unbelievable. Little Missy, may I know if you are the one running this wanderer's shop? Elder Wu couldn't help asking the question on his mind. No, this shop is run by guild leader Black Flame. I am only managing this place on his behalf, Yu Luo said, shaking her head. Black Flame runs this place? Elder Wu was stunned. In its current magnificent state, the wanderer's shop was most likely worth 1,000,000 ancient gold or more. Elder Wu might have believed it if Heaven's Blade owned this place. After all, Heaven's Blade had been operating on Dragonheart Island for a long time now. However, he was told that Shifeng actually owned this shop. How could he swallow such a tale? While Elder Wu was stunned, Thousand Lives quickly reacted, asking, "We are from 13 Thrones. We are acquainted with guild leader Black Flame, and we currently have business to discuss with him. Can we meet him now?" "I'm afraid you will have to wait a while," Yu Luo said, shaking her head. Over a dozen of Dragonheart Island's powers are currently discussing business with guild leader Black Flame, so it isn't appropriate for you to enter now. However, you won't have to wait too long, either. I believe they will be done in another dozen minutes or so. Over a dozen powers? Elder Wu was slightly surprised. He never thought that so many of Dragonheart Island's powers had already made a move. All right. We'll wait. Elder Wu had expected that some of Dragonheart Island's powers would try to meet with Shifeng since Shifeng was basically the overlord of Dragonheart Island now. It was only natural for guilds and adventurer teams to try to partner with Zero Wing. However, Elder Wu wasn't too worried about these other guilds and adventurer teams. After all, unlike them, 13 Thrones had the city building order, something Zero Wing urgently needed, as a bargaining chip. After waiting for around a dozen minutes, Elder Wu's group saw more of Dragonheart Island's local powers arrive and join them waiting on the second floor. Among these powers was the Four Saints Society, a super guild that was equal in strength to 13 Thrones, represented by its first vice guild leader, Intoxicated Drunkard. He was a monster with the title of Strongest Shield of the Sea. Unlike other superpowers, though, the Four Saints Society had focused its development entirely on the sea. Its naval strength now rivaled that of the 5 great super guilds. Intoxicated drunkard's arrival surprised even Elder Wu. However, as the various powers observed each other, Yu Luo, who had been quietly standing guard by the staircase, suddenly said, "Guild leader Black Flame just finished his discussions with the first batch of powers. You may now go upstairs." "Will everyone be going together?" Thousand Lives asked. They wanted to negotiate with Shifeng in private. A group negotiation was out of the question. That's right. There are too many powers seeking to meet with guild leader Black Flame. Holding private discussions would take too long. Yu Luo nodded. "If you wish to meet with guild leader Black Flame privately, you can return a few days later." "You people." Thousand Lives grew a little angry at Yu Luo's words. They were representatives of 13 Thrones, a super guild. They had already shown plenty of respect by waiting here for over a dozen minutes. Yet, their treatment was no different from what the other powers here received. "Thousand, it doesn't matter. We'll enter together if we have to," Elder Wu said, chuckling. He then continued in a whisper, "Black Flame really knows how to play his cards. He knows the various powers are bringing various partnership offers and business deals to him, so he's basically having everyone compete with each other. At the same time, he gets to choose the best deal. Unfortunately, our proposal is something Black Flame will not be able to refuse." After giving the matter some thought, Thousand Lives nodded in agreement. In any case, Shifeng would still have to beg them for help. It wouldn't matter whether they negotiated privately or in a group. In this situation, the Four Saints Society's group remained silent. It was evident that they were also confident in their proposal. Meanwhile, upon seeing this situation, Yu Luo smiled and said, "Please enter." After Yu Luo finished speaking, the representatives of the dozen or so powers present made their way up to the Wanderer's shop's 3rd floor. However, upon arriving on the 3rd floor and seeing the items displayed here, everyone nearly had their eyes fall out of their sockets. Level 120 to level 130 Dark Gold Set Equipment Designs. Level 100 plus Epic Equipment Designs. Advanced Magic Array Designs. Advanced Shop Construction Design. Advanced Hotel Construction Design. Master Icefire Bomb Design. Each and every item displayed here was something that couldn't be found easily in the outside world. However, the items were also astonishingly expensive. Even the cheapest cost 6,000 ancient gold, enough money to purchase a relatively good plot of land in Dragonheart City. However, while the gathered group was agog over the items available on the 3rd floor, a sense of oppression suddenly enveloped everyone, making them feel incredibly uncomfortable. This sense of oppression originated from the 2 cloaked men standing beside Shifeng. Tier 48. Why are there even more Tier 4s? Both Elder Wu's group and Intoxicated Drunkard's group were shocked by this situation. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU first, it was Heaven's Blades Yu Luo. Now, 2 more Tier 4 players actually appeared behind Shifeng. Moreover, the 2 men's auras were much stronger than that of any of the Tier 4 players they had come across before. Tier 4 players currently stood at the very top of God's Domain's player hierarchy. Having one Tier 4 player would already allow a player force to gain a stable foothold in the game's currently chaotic state and become an object of fear for the various superpowers. Shifeng currently had 3 Tier 4 players on his side. Including Shifeng and Firedance, this meant Zero Wing had a total of 5 Tier 4 players under its command. This caliber of strength was simply maddening. Even the 5 great super guilds were unlikely to have as many Tier 4 players as Zero Wing did. Meanwhile, after scanning the crowd before him, Shifeng said calmly, "Everyone, if you have something to say, please say it directly. I still have many matters to attend to, so I truly do not have time for beating around the bush." Chapter 2807, 3-Star Wanderer's Shop. Chapter 2807, 3-Star Wanderer's Shop. Shifeng's statement was like a hammer that struck everyone's mind. For a time, those intent on negotiating with Shifeng to maximize their own profits were nonplussed. Even Elder Wu, who had come here brimming with confidence, was momentarily at a loss for words. Shifeng's display of power was simply too astonishing. Zero Wing's strength had severely exceeded Elder Wu's expectations. The 4 Tier 4 players here in this Wanderer's shop plus the 3 Tier 4 experts over at the Twin Towers Kingdom meant Zero Wing had a total of 7 Tier 4 players on its side. With such strength, even NPC forces would find dealing with Zero Wing tough. While the gathered crowd suspected that Shifeng was trying to instill fear into them by showing off his power, Shifeng himself didn't think he was doing such a thing at all. This was because he was truly busy. Initially, Shifeng planned to contact Heaven's Blade's commander after entering Dragonheart City. However, for some reason, Divine Edge and the others couldn't contact Zwei, not even through offline means. This situation temporarily prevented Zero Wing and Heaven's Blade from furthering their partnership, and it severely affected Shifeng's plans. Fortunately, Divine Shadow had agreed to gather up the remaining Heaven's Blade members and put Heaven's Blade under Zero Wing's banner in the meantime. Now, Heaven's Blade was barely considered an adventurer team subordinated to Zero Wing and had to obey Shifeng's arrangements. Dragonheart Island's various powers had long since split Heaven's Blade's territories inside the World Tower among themselves after the adventurer team disbanded. However, War Blood's fall granted Dragonheart Island's various powers a new opportunity to gain more territory. Hence, Shifeng had tasked Divine Shadow with snatching War Blood's territory first. After all, these territories were important sources of ancient coins. He couldn't keep Heaven's Blade's members fed for free. Aside from territories inside the World Tower, Heaven's Blade also had over a dozen shops in key locations inside Dragonheart City. Shifeng planned on bringing some of Candlelight's products to sell in these shops. As for the land surrounding the World Tower, due to Zwei's absence, Divine Shadow could only delegate one medium-sized land to Zero Wing with his authority. What this land would be used for was entirely up to Shifeng. However, half of the profits the land generated would have to be split with Heaven's Blade. After all, there were still plenty of people in the adventurer team that needed nurturing. Shifeng had no opinion in regard to this situation. On the contrary, he was very happy to secure the management rights of a medium-sized land. After all, Zero Wing's members also had to explore the World Tower. The hotel built on a small-sized land was hardly enough for Zero Wing's purposes. A medium-sized hotel would alleviate the guild's pressure. Hence, Shifeng needed to arrange what kind of hotel to construct. Aside from this, Shifeng also received another piece of good news when he entered Dragonheart City. The Wanderer's shop was eligible for promotion to 3-star status. Originally, he had only planned to have the Wanderer's shop purchase some epic materials and the precious materials necessary to construct the small mobile fortress. He never thought that in the time he was away, the Wanderer's shop would actually meet the conditions for promotion to 3-star status. So long as a Wanderer's shop reached 3-star status, it would undergo a qualitative transformation. Hence, Shifeng had decisively spent 30,000 of the ancient gold the Wanderer's shop had earned during his absence, and upgraded the shop to 3-star status. However, before he could even check out the 3-star Wanderer's shop specifics, Dragonheart City's various powers had come looking for him already. This forced him to push back his schedule and negotiate with these profit-hungry powers seeking a share of War Blood's corpse. Meanwhile, after silence enveloped the room for a short moment, Intoxicated Drunkard, the Four Saints Society's vice-guild leader, stepped forward. Guild leader Black Flame, I understand that Zero Wing is planning to partner with Heaven's Blade to annex all of War Blood's resource spots. However, although Blood Oath is currently imprisoned and War Blood is in chaos, War Blood's backer, the Secret Hand Association, is not to be trifled with. With Secret Hand's presence, annexing the 17 resource spots War Blood holds on the 4th underground floor will be difficult. Of course, I believe that with your strength, annexing those resource spots shouldn't be a problem. However, maintaining them will be. Such a task will require a large number of experts. It can't be done with just a few Tier 4 experts. Hence, the Four Saints Society wishes to partner with Zero Wing to go against War Blood and Secret Hand, Intoxicated Drunkard said confidently. Once we annex all of War Blood's resource spots on the 4th floor, each of our sides will take half. Of course, we won't let Zero Wing give up these resource spots for nothing. After saying so, Intoxicated Drunkard took out a city building order from his bag. The Four Saints Society understands that Zero Wing is currently having difficulty defending the Secret Covenant Tower. However, with this city building order, Zero Wing can instantly construct a guild city beside the tower. With this guild city to fall back on, Zero Wing should have a much easier time repelling the various superpowers. In addition, the Four Saints Society will also trade various rare materials and level 110 plus secret silver weapons and equipment with Zero Wing. We will sell these items to Zero Wing at market value. May I know what you think of this, Guild Leader Black Flame? When Intoxicated Drunkard took out the city building order, the other powers' representatives were dumbfounded. This situation also made many of the powers seeking to partner with Zero Wing despair. The Four Saints Society was a super guild. Only a few powers operating on Dragonheart Island could match its resources, manpower, and background. Even setting aside the fact that the Four Saints Society was a super guild, just the city building order alone made it impossible for the various powers present to compete with the Four Saints Society. This was because the city building order was what Zero Wing currently needed the most. At this time, a gloomy expression appeared on Elder Wu's face. He never thought that the Four Saints Society would have a city building order too. This would undoubtedly increase the competition. After the silence in the room had stretched for some time, Shifeng swept a glance at the various powers' representatives. May I know if anyone else has something to say? If not, I will have to ask you to leave. I still have to continue detailed discussions with Vice Guild Leader Drunkard, Shifeng said in a calm tone. However, his interest in the city building order was obvious to everyone present. Upon seeing this situation, Intoxicated Drunkard smiled in satisfaction. He was very confident in the success of the partnership this time, as he was certain Zero Wing wouldn't be able to resist the city building order's temptation. Hence, he had paid no heed to having to attend negotiations together with the other powers. What should we do now, Elder Wu? Thousand Lives asked anxiously. The World Tower's fourth underground floor was crucial for them to search for Tier 4 legacy lands. The influence of a Tier 4 player was not something Tier 3 players could hope to match. Every addition of a Tier 4 player could increase a guild's overall strength by a large margin. Simultaneously, Tier 4 players were crucial in resisting the invasion of NPC forces. For the current super guilds, Tier 3 players were no longer the thing they lacked the most. After all, they had the required foundation and resources to nurture a large number of high-caliber experts. Even without complete Tier 3 legacies, it was only a matter of time before these experts reached Tier 3. As proof of this point, not one of the superpowers attempting to wrestle control over the Secret Covenant Tower was a super guild. Only super first-rate guilds, which were lacking in foundation and resources, were contending for the tower. However, the World Tower's fourth underground floor, which could reliably generate Tier 4 legacy lands, was a different story. Moreover, the World Tower still had the fifth underground floor and beyond. The chances of Tier 4 legacy lands appearing in these locations were most likely even higher. However, if a power did not possess a base of operations on the fourth underground floor, exploring the even more dangerous fifth underground floor would be utterly impossible for this power. Just as the various powers' representatives were about to turn around and leave, a deep voice resounded in the room. Wait a minute. Guild Leader Black Flame. Suddenly, Elder Wu said, 13 Thrones plans on partnering with Zero Wing as well. Moreover, the conditions we offer will not be any inferior to the Four Saints Societies. After saying so, Elder Wu also brought out a city building order. Crap. Another city building order? The representatives of the various powers present gasped at this situation. The city building order was an incomparably rare item, no less rare than fragmented legendary items. Meanwhile, it was many times more valuable than fragmented legendary items. After all, there was no way a fragmented legendary item could compare with an entire guild city. When Elder Wu took out a city building order, Intoxicated Drunkard's complexion darkened slightly. This is interesting. What should have originally been a monopoly has now become a two-sided competition. I wonder how Black Flame will decide. Both parties are super guilds, and neither is weaker than the other. Moreover, both have their own advantages as well. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. The various powers representatives couldn't help their curiosity as they looked at Elder Wu and Intoxicated Drunkard. They wondered how Shifeng would proceed in this situation. By stating that 13 thrones would match the Four Saints Society's offer, Elder Wu was basically hinting to Intoxicated Drunkard for their two guilds to avoid competing with each other. That way, they could maximize the profits from Zero Wing. Simultaneously, his words also compelled Shifeng to make a decision. Shifeng should choose to partner with either 13 Thrones or the Four Saints Society. If Shifeng refused to choose one, then negotiations would not proceed. Naturally, Intoxicated Drunkard quickly picked up on Elder Wu's intentions. Hence, he remained silent and simply looked at Shifeng. Evidently, he planned on taking the same stance as Elder Wu. It seems both of you came with sincerity for cooperation. Shifeng smiled as he looked at the two city building orders before him. Unfortunately, I cannot agree to any of your conditions. Chapter 2808, Shifeng's Conditions. Chapter 2808, Shifeng's Conditions. You can't agree? What do you mean by that, Guild Leader Black Flame? Elder Wu and Intoxicated Drunkard were confused when they heard Shifeng's response. Similarly, the representatives of the other powers present were stunned by Shifeng's words. Originally, they thought that they would see an intense clash between 13 Thrones and the Four Saints Society, and Zero Wing would decide how to settle the fight. Yet, Shifeng had outright rejected both guilds. What was going on here? Is Black Flame trying to teach Elder Wu and Intoxicated Drunkard a lesson for banding together? Probably. After all, Zero Wing isn't faring that well over at the Twin Towers Kingdom. It definitely needs a city building order. If I were in Black Flame's shoes, I would probably do something like this too. After all, that's half of the 4th floor's resource spots as well as fortresses and Tier 4 legacy lands. Trading away all these things just for one city building order is simply absurd. Although the two super guilds offered to help garrison the resource spots, that kind of help is inconsequential. With Black Flame's status and deterrence on Dragonheart Island, there's no way anyone would dare have any designs on Warblood's resource spots and fortresses. As the various representatives discussed Shifeng's actions and realized his aim, they couldn't help admiring him for his wisdom. He had thoroughly placed both super guilds in a bind with this move of his. After all, both the Four Saints Society and 13 Thrones were incredibly desperate to produce Tier 4 players. This was because a few super first-rate guilds had already produced Tier 4 players, yet these two super guilds had not produced one even now. In terms of top combatants, the two guilds had already fallen way behind their peers. Hence, the two guilds' desperation for Tier 4 players. Otherwise, with the status of these two super guilds, they wouldn't take the initiative to seek cooperation with Zero Wing at all. While the onlookers were discussing quietly among themselves, Shifeng looked at Elder Wu and Intoxicated Drunkard and said, "Please do not misunderstand. I see your sincerity in this matter. However, a city building order isn't particularly urgent for Zero Wing. In fact, you can even say that we don't need it." Don't need it? Elder Wu and Intoxicated Drunkard smiled subconsciously when they heard Shifeng's words. May we know what you need most now, Guild Leader Black Flame? The two of them felt that Shifeng was basically treating them like 3-year-old children. If he were the guild leader of any other guild, they might actually believe these words. After all, a guild city would only increase the number of strongholds a guild owned by one. However, with NPC forces currently running rampant, having one additional stronghold meant that a guild would have to spread its forces even thinner, which was indeed an incredibly troublesome matter. In the case of Zero Wing, though, these words were blatant nonsense. However, Elder Wu and Intoxicated Drunkard knew that it wouldn't be appropriate for them to call Shifeng out on his lie, so they decided to play along with him. Manpower. Ignoring the act the two people before him were putting on, Shifeng laughed and said, "You two might not believe me, but what Zero Wing lacks now is only manpower. We do not lack anything else. If your two guilds really wish to partner with Zero Wing and acquire World Tower's 4th underground floor's resource spots, take out some real sincerity." Truth be told, the city building order was something Shifeng could do without. A small mobile fortress was basically half a city. Not to mention, an ordinary guild city wouldn't suffice to let Zero Wing exert complete control over the Secret Covenant Tower. Only a fortress could do that. This was because a guild city was more focused on defense than offense. A guild city mainly served as a place for players to rest and trade. At best, it could provide some benefits to the players heading into the secret Covenant Tower. It couldn't actually prevent other powers from forcing their way into the tower. In the end, Zero Wing would still have to rely on its own strength to accomplish this feat. This just so happened to be something beyond Zero Wing right now. However, it was a different story for a small mobile fortress. Mobile fortresses possessed great defensive capabilities and were top-tier war weapons. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been able to become the overlords of the sky. Manpower? Elder Wu and Intoxicated Drunkard nodded slightly at the same time. Although they found Shifeng's words more agreeable now, they still felt he was putting on an act. The two of them then exchanged looks and came to a tacit understanding. Since Shifeng insisted on acting, they would play along and see how long Shifeng could keep doing so. Smiling, Intoxicated Drunkard asked, "May I know how you plan on having our two guilds cooperate with you, Guild Leader Black Flame?" "Simple. I just need your two guilds to supply me with 300 advanced forgers, 200 advanced alchemists, 500 advanced architects, 100 advanced magicians, and 2 master magicians. I'll also need 10,000 Tier 3 players. Lend these people to me for half a month," Shifeng said, chuckling. "If you can agree to that, I will give you 2 of War Blood's small fortresses." When Shifeng finished speaking, Elder Wu and Intoxicated Drunkard were stunned. They couldn't understand Shifeng's purpose. Not only did he not want their city building orders, but he was even asking for a large number of lifestyle players. Although Shifeng had also asked for 10,000 Tier 3 experts, the various superpowers already had around 50,000 Tier 3 expert players on average at this stage of the game. Lending 10,000 Tier 3 experts wouldn't be a problem for their 2 super guilds. On the contrary, the conditions Shifeng offered were incredibly advantageous to their 2 guilds. With a small fortress on the World Tower's 4th underground floor, their 2 guilds could reside on the 4th floor in the future. Simultaneously, they would have the necessary foundation to explore the 5th underground floor. "May I know your thoughts on this?" Shifeng asked, smiling. "City building order? The 4th underground floor's small fortresses? Tier 4 legacy lands?" These things were inconsequential to his present self. So long as he had the small mobile fortress, nobody in God's domain would be able to threaten Zero Wing. Not even Tier 4 players. The only problem was the massive scale of the small mobile fortress's construction, which required a considerable amount of manpower. It wasn't something he could accomplish easily by himself. Initially, he had been considering having all of Candlelight's lifestyle players halt their work and focus on constructing the small mobile fortress. He never imagined that 2 super guilds would send themselves to his doorsteps. "Is what you say true, Guild Leader Black Flame?" Intoxicated Drunkard asked skeptically. "You can rest assured on this point. We can sign a contract for this. Your 2 guilds will be free to capture the 2 promised fortresses, and Zero Wing will not lay a finger on them. I can even stop Secret Hand's NPCs from interfering with your 2 guilds," Shifeng said with a sincere smile on his face. Upon hearing Shifeng's words of assurance, Elder Wu said without hesitation, "In that case, I agree to your offer on behalf of 13 Thrones, Guild Leader Black Flame." What super guilds lacked the least was manpower. Even though Shifeng was asking for quite a lot of manpower, it was well within their tolerance. "The Four Saints Society has no problem with this arrangement, either," Intoxicated Drunkard said, an indescribably happy smile appearing on his face. For the Four Saints Society, being able to gain one of War Blood's small fortresses just by loaning some manpower was an incredibly profitable trade. It was much better than surrendering a precious city building order. As for the threat of the Secret Hand Association, just one word from Shifeng would most likely prevent any of the association's Tier 4 NPCs from setting foot in the World Tower. After all, the Holy Star Knight Legion was both the protector and manager of the World Tower. Prohibiting NPCs that attacked players from entering the World Tower would be an easy task for the Knight Legion. Without the Secret Hand Association, the only Tier 4 combatant Warblood would have on its side would be Autumn Plant. While he would still pose a problem, the Four Saints Society and 13 Thrones could handle him. Was upon seeing this situation, the other powers' representatives grew envious. They never thought that Shafeng would offer such loose conditions to the two super guilds. Nonetheless, fulfilling these conditions was still impossible for the other powers. Setting aside the large number of lifestyle players Shafeng sought, just the condition of 10,000 Tier 3 experts was already beyond them. Only the superpowers had the ability to do so. Elder Wu and Intoxicated Drunkard signed a contract with Shafeng on behalf of their respective guilds right away. According to the contract, 13 thrones and the Four Saints Society would lend the stated manpower to Shafeng for half a month. Moreover, all operations for this half a month had to be kept a secret. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. After signing the contract, the two super guilds promptly summoned the necessary manpower to Dragonheart Island. This was because the contract would take effect only after all the required manpower was assembled and transferred to Shafeng. Before that, their two guilds shouldn't even think of capturing War Blood's small fortresses. Having concluded negotiations with the two super guilds, Shafeng finally had some free time to himself. Inside the quiet third floor, Shafeng took out the several items he acquired from killing Sabrid and began inspecting them. Previously, he had been too busy to inspect Sabrid's loot. Now that he had finished his tasks, he could finally take a proper look at them. Sabrid had been the vice commander of Dragonheart City's City Defense Legion, a level 160, Tier 4 NPC, and an executive of the Secret Hand Association. Nobody would believe that he had only one fragmented legendary item on him. Chapter 2809, Half a Step Away. Chapter 2809, Half a Step Away. Sabrid had dropped a total of 6 items. Aside from the fragmented legendary greatsword Demonic Shadow, the 5 remaining items looked very ordinary. In fact, they looked so normal that Shafeng was confused when he first stored them in his bag. This was because the 5 items appeared to be a set. Of the 5 items, 4 were mirrors made entirely of crystal. However, unlike the fragmented legendary greatsword, these 4 mirrors did not radiate a frightening aura. More precisely, they did not even have a hint of aura. They looked ordinary beyond ordinary. As for the 5th item, it was an ink-black crystal the size of a basketball. Like the 4 crystalline mirrors, this crystal ball was similarly indescribably ordinary. It did not radiate even a whiff of mana. Interesting. Realization flashed in Shafeng's eyes as he looked at the ink-black crystal ball and 4 crystalline mirrors placed before him. If I didn't take a closer look at them, I would never have thought these 5 items actually had a magic disguise. The standard of this disguise is also absurdly high. It is definitely at the half-step Grandmaster standard. In God's domain, apart from special items, players needed to use the appraisal skill on most items to inspect their information. However, there was also another type of item that was outside of this category, and that was magically disguised items. Items that had magic disguise used on them would have their information concealed. Using the appraisal skill on these items would show that they were no different from ordinary garbage. However, applying a magic disguise on an item was a complicated process, and even a master magician would need several hours just to complete a master magic disguise's magic array. Needless to say, placing a half-step Grandmaster magic disguise would be even more tedious. And worse, the disguise would disappear whenever the disguised item was used. One would have to apply a new magic disguise to disguise the item again. Thus, magically disguised items were incredibly rare in God's domain. Most players wouldn't even come across one throughout their career in God's domain. And if players did come across such an item, they would often treat it as garbage and dispose of it. However, Sabrid was both the vice commander of Dragonheart City's City Defense Night Legion and a level 160, Tier 4 NPC. In God's domain, Dragonheart City could be considered a kingdom. In terms of status, the neutral city rivaled imperial capitals. Hence, despite being only the vice commander of one of Dragonheart City's Night Legions, Sabrid's status was higher than even that of magistrates that managed the various kingdoms' main cities. In addition, Sabrid was also an executive of the Secret Hand Association, the strongest NPC force on Dragonheart Island. If one were to say that an NPC like Sabrid had dropped a bunch of odds and ends, let alone Shafeng, even ordinary players wouldn't believe it. Of course, perceiving such a high-level disguise wasn't an easy task. Let alone the standard appraisal skill, even Shifeng's omniscient eyes would allow him to see only the cover information of a disguised item. Only those with great mastery over magic arrays would notice that an item was magically disguised. The 5 items placed before Shifeng were precisely magically disguised items. On the surface, these 5 items looked ordinary and unremarkable. If not for Shifeng's in-depth understanding of the operating principles of mana, he wouldn't have noticed anything wrong at all. Thank goodness I'm already an advanced master magician. Otherwise, I really wouldn't have noticed such an exquisite disguise. Looking at the 5 items, Shifeng couldn't contain his elation as he studied the disguise. While it was possible for one to remove a magic disguise forcibly, that option should only be a last resort because doing so would damage the disguised item. Not to mention, the removal of a magic disguise was a process favored by all magicians. The removal of a magic disguise was an opportunity for a magician to improve their knowledge since the removal process tested a person's knowledge and control over magic arrays. One would have to locate the fixed mana roots and identify the manipulation method of the magic array to remove the disguise. This was why players seeking to improve their knowledge of magic arrays would usually purchase disguised items from magic shops. Only, the more profound a magic disguise was, the greater their price and rarity. Magic disguises at the master rank and above were especially rare. This was partly because master magicians could earn much more money through selling other magic arrays. Moreover, creating these other magic arrays took much less time than the master magic disguises magic array did. Creating master magic disguises simply wasn't cost-effective. Subsequently, the seconds and minutes passed by rapidly. While Shifeng attempted to undo the disguise, 3 hours elapsed in the blink of an eye. He had started with manipulating 6 independent strands of mana simultaneously to trigger the magic array's mana nodes, then gradually increased that number to 12. Shifeng had to admit that a half-step Grandmaster magic disguise was truly profound. Even after he had switched to manipulating 16 strands of mana simultaneously, he managed to trigger only 60% of the magic array's mana nodes. This isn't right. There are over 1,000 mana nodes on this thing. If I merely follow the predetermined mana routes, I doubt I can trigger every mana node even if I control 32 strands of mana simultaneously. The more Shifeng studied the half-step Grandmaster magic disguise, the more he found it to be amazing. The creation of this thing had already exceeded the limits of the human mind. Although it was only simple mana manipulation, the degree of multitasking required to fully activate it put him in a huge bind. He simply couldn't get all of the magic array's 1,000+ mana nodes running simultaneously with his current standard. Afterward, Shifeng earnestly inspected the magic disguise once more. He had a vague feeling that he had found a pattern, but he couldn't tell what it was exactly. Immediately, he took out a crystal of souls from his bag and consumed it to calm and empty his mind. 1 hour. 2 hours. 4 hours. Before Shifeng realized it, he had already spent half a day scrutinizing the magic array's mana nodes. I see. Every several dozen of these nodes form a small magic array, and some of the nodes on these small magic arrays connect with other small magic arrays. If I start my attack from the crucial nodes, I should be able to save myself a lot of trouble. After thinking up to this point, Shifeng began manipulating the magic array's mana once more. This time, though, he started with the mana nodes with the highest repetition rate. Completion rate 20%, 40%, 60%, 80%. When the disguise magic array lit up, Shifeng grew ecstatic. However, his joy wasn't just from cracking the magic array. It was also because his understanding of magic arrays had further improved and he finally grasped the difference between advanced master magicians and half-step grandmaster magicians. The sound of glass shattering echoed in the room. Subsequently, the undisguised crystalline mirror made the space within the room incomparably cold and heavy. What powerful mana! Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. Even for Shifeng, this was the first time he had felt such strange and heavy mana. It felt as if the object before him wasn't an item but an ancient god instead. In fact, he even had the misconception that the energy flowing around him was no longer mana but a more terrifying energy that carried great destructive power. If not for him having reached Tier 4 already, He might have lost consciousness just from being subjected to this oppressive energy. Crap. Who was this Sabrid? Shifeng was dumbfounded when the crystalline mirror statistics appeared in front of him. Chapter 2810, World Mirror. Chapter 2810, World Mirror. Shifeng had considered many possibilities for the items Sabrid dropped. He had even entertained the possibility that one of the disguised items might be a damaged legendary item. After all, killing a Tier 4 NPC inside Dragonheart City was incredibly difficult. Had Sabrid not taken the initiative to leave the city's boundaries and stood inside the city instead, the odds of Shifeng killing the NPC would have been 0. This was because Dragonheart City's defensive magic array strengthened all allied NPCs within the city. Unless Sabrid violated Dragonheart City's laws, the other NPCs within the city would have immediately come to Sabrid's assistance as soon as Shifeng attacked him. In fact, Shayra could have saved Sabrid as Shifeng was about to land the killing blow. After all Tier 5 NPCs were capable of world creation. One shouldn't underestimate Shayra simply because she arrived at Dragonheart City's entrance by flying to the scene slowly. If she wished, she could have moved from the World Tower to the city's entrance in the blink of an eye. Looking at the crystalline mirror in his hand, Shifeng began speculating about Sabrid's identity. This was because this item didn't belong in the hands of a minor character. Turning to the 3 other crystalline mirrors and the ink-black crystal ball, Shifeng smiled involuntarily. According to rumors, only those who succeed in conquering an empire can obtain the world mirror. Yet, I actually got it from a Tier 4 NPC. I doubt anybody would believe me if I told them about this. The World Mirror, also known as the Space Mirror, the World Mirror was a treasure passed down since ancient times. It wasn't something the modern god's domain could produce. This was because the World Mirror originated from ancient gods. Even creating a replica of it was impossible. These items were treated as national heirlooms by the various empires. Without taking control of an empire, players wouldn't be able to obtain a world mirror at all. Of course, the world mirror Shifeng acquired from Sabrid wasn't complete. The world mirror was a set of 12 mirrors and 1 control core. He would have to gather all 13 components to complete it. A complete world mirror could seal the sky, lock the earth, and move space itself. One shouldn't compare the world mirror to a simple sealing barrier. The world mirror was far more than that. It could not only seal a designated space but even transform the sealed space into a world of its own. Even Tier 5 existences shouldn't think of breaking out of this miniature world. Within the boundaries of this miniature world, a hostile existence's strength would plummet. Tier 5 existences would be fortunate to exhibit 30% of their strength while subject to the world mirror's suppression. Existences below Tier 5 would fare even worse. The world mirror possessed an incredible range. Once activated, it would have no problem sealing an area encompassing several large maps. In the past, unless a Tier 6 God-ranked expert took to the field, any player forces that possessed a world mirror had been unstoppable within the territory protected by their world mirror. Even Tier 6 experts had their combat power weakened significantly under the world mirror's influence. This was also why super guilds with several Tier 6 experts had sometimes been helpless against the territories of top-ranking first-rate guilds with only 1 Tier 6 expert defending them. The world mirror Shifeng possessed was incomplete, so it couldn't create a world of its own. Regardless, this incomplete world mirror would still be considered a priceless treasure by any guild. It was far more valuable than even legendary items. This was because even an incomplete world mirror boasted many incredible effects. One example would be its ability to move a guild city to any desired location. Aside from that, if Shifeng bound this incomplete world mirror to the core magic array of a guild city, the said guild city would be immediately promoted to basic main city. A complete world mirror could elevate a guild city to the status of an advanced main city. Most imperial capitals were merely advanced main cities. Holy cities, one level above advanced main cities, numbered less than a handful in the modern god's domain. Meanwhile, a holy city was something that couldn't be conquered without Tier 6 god. Anyone who attacked a holy city without a Tier 6 god on their side would only be seeking their own deaths. It wouldn't matter how many Tier 5s they had. This was because one of the conditions for promotion to Holy City was the World Mirror's protection. Even having multiple Tier 5 existences garrisoning a city wouldn't suffice to meet a Holy City's defensive requirements. Now that Sabrid had dropped such a treasure, how could Shifeng not be shocked and confused? Although I don't know who exactly this NPC is, now that I have the World Mirror, I can adjust my development plan. Various thoughts occurred to Shifeng as he looked at the World Mirror. Even though this World Mirror was incomplete, it could still exhibit astonishing effects. He couldn't create a holy city now, but he could still create a main city. If Zero Wing gained a main guild city at this stage of the game, it would do wonders for the guild. The footprint of a main city was 3 times that of an advanced city. In terms of defense, a main city could easily withstand the attacks of Tier 4 existences. Most importantly, at the main city standard, a guild city would have no problem establishing itself almost anywhere in God's domain, aside from forbidden lands. It wouldn't have to worry about defending against monster tides. While Shifeng was debating which of Zero Wing's cities he should bind the World Mirror to, he suddenly received a message from Intoxicated Drunkard. Guild Leader Black Flame, both our guilds have already gathered the people you require in Dragonheart City. In a slightly eager tone, Intoxicated Drunkard asked, "When will you come to receive them?" "Already?" This news surprised Shifeng. Looking at the time, he saw that only half a day had gone by since the contract signing with the 2 super guilds. With Dragonheart City still sealed, teleporting into the city was impossible, hence, traveling to Dragonheart City would be difficult for players. Needless to say, assembling so many lifestyle players in Dragonheart City would be even more difficult. He had anticipated having to wait at least 2 days, yet the 2 super guilds had fulfilled their end of the bargain in just half a day. Their efficiency was truly superb. Of course. Smiling proudly, Intoxicated Drunkard said, "You shouldn't forget that our 2 guilds have focused on maritime development, Guild Leader Black Flame. This much is still within our capabilities." "Okay. I'll head over right away." Nodding, Shifeng stored the World Mirror and promptly left the Wanderer's shop to receive the 2 super guilds people. A group of 20,000 Tier 3 experts and several thousand lifestyle players would attract anyone's attention. However, as Elder Wu and Intoxicated Drunkard understood Shifeng's thoughts very well, they did not conduct the handover in Dragonheart City. Instead, they chose to do it outside the city. This way, the transaction would be sub rosa, and Shifeng wouldn't have to worry about his intentions getting exposed. "Guild Leader Black Flame, all of the manpower you requested is here. These people will follow your command for the next half-month. Moreover, they have also signed a contract that prohibits them from leaking information on the task they have to do," Intoxicated Drunkard said, smiling as he pointed at the tens of thousands of players standing in the valley behind him. "Now that we've fulfilled our end of the contract, may we know when our 2 guilds can head to the World Tower?" Their 2 guilds urgently needed the 4th underground floor's small fortresses. After all, the sooner they occupied the fortresses, the sooner they could start searching for Tier 4 legacy lands. Otherwise, they wouldn't have expended so much effort to bring all these people to Dragonheart City in such a short time. Looking at the anxious expressions of Intoxicated Drunkard and Thousand Lives, Shifeng chuckled and said, "You can begin capturing the fortresses now. I have already notified Yu Luo about it. She is also an honorary knight, and she will keep an eye out for War Blood and Secret Hand inside the World Tower. If Secret Hand dares to try anything, they won't get away with it. So, you can do as you wish inside the tower." "In that case, thank you, Guild Leader Black Flame." Intoxicated Drunkard's eyes glowed brightly when he heard Shifeng's reply. "I still have matters to attend to, so I'll take my leave first." Thousand Lives similarly departed in a hurry after thanking Shifeng. After the 2 guild executives left, the remaining members of the 2 super guilds looked at Shifeng in a daze, wondering what Shifeng planned on having them do afterward. "Everyone, follow me. I'm afraid you'll be very busy for the upcoming period." After glancing at the tens of thousands of players in the valley, Shifeng nodded and led them to a nearby island. He then set up a sealing barrier there to prevent anyone on the island from contacting the outside world. This barrier also prevented players from going offline. Anyone who wished to log out of the game would have to leave the barrier first. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU 3 days later, on a barren island nearby Dragonheart Island. With a face full of excitement, Solitary 9 flew up to Shifeng, who was drawing a magic array inside a humongous steel fortress. Commander, I just received news from Dragonheart City. Starlink and Miracle have begun taking action. Should we head over now? After completing the core magic array, Shifeng breathed out a deep sigh. Those guys sure moved quickly, Shifeng said, chuckling. Fine. I'm done here as well. Have Thorn get ready on his side. We're returning to the eastern continent now. Yes, sir. Solitary 9 nodded, his eyes shining with excitement. Chapter 2811, Changes to Sky Spring City. Chapter 2811, Changes to Sky Spring City. Twin Towers Kingdom, Sky Spring City. Accompanied by several bright flashes, 3 cloaked figures appeared in the city's teleportation hall. These 3 figures belonged to none other than Shifeng, Lifeless Thorn, and Solitary 9. The sight of a massive crowd of players greeted the trio upon arrival. At a glance, they could estimate that the building held over 10,000 players. The place looked much more prosperous than even the teleportation hall of the Twin Towers Kingdom's royal capital. The majority of the players present were Tier 3 and sported guild emblems belonging to various guilds. These players all radiated a cold killing intent, which created a strange atmosphere inside the teleportation hall. Why are there so many guild experts here? Solitary 9 was surprised as he took in the surroundings. Even Dragonheart City's teleportation hall is far from comparable to this place. From what Solitary 9 could tell, quite a few of these Tier 3 experts were at the Refinement Realm standard. Even among the superpowers, Refinement Realm experts were treated as core members. However, he counted more than 500 Refinement Realm experts just in the teleportation hall alone. Around the number of Refinement Realm experts an average superpower possessed. Friends, you must have just arrived in the Twin Towers Kingdom, right? I'll have you know that this day might very well go down in the history books of God's domain, a robust, Tier 3 Berserker said, smiling as he walked out of the teleportation array. This Tier 3 Berserker had reached level 122. He was fully equipped in level 120 fine gold equipment and carried a level 120 dark gold axe on his back. Based on equipment alone, he could rank among the top of Tier 3 players. Moreover, this Berserker did not wear a guild emblem. This meant he was an independent expert. Being able to secure himself such high-quality equipment was a testament to his capabilities. The dozen or so players following after the Berserker possessed similar equipment standards. Since everyone in the group had a white lion symbol marking their equipment, they evidently were members of the same adventurer team. Go down in God's domain's history? Stunned by these words, Solitary 9 asked curiously, Friend, we have indeed just arrived in this kingdom. Do you mind telling us what's going to happen here today? Our White Lion Adventurer team just received news of this as well. It seems that Starlink somehow managed to recruit the help of some Tier 4 NPCs, and these NPCs captured around a dozen guild executives from Zero Wing, Unyielding Soul, and Crimson Emperor during a fight at a blockade. These guild executives are currently imprisoned in Starlink's residence, the robust Berserker said. Starlink has announced a crusade against Zero Wing's blockade at the Secret Covenant Tower and is calling for all powers to gather in Sky Spring City. Starlink is also demanding the 3 guilds remove the seal on Sky Spring City. Otherwise, it's going to use the captured executives as a sacrifice as an opening gambit. I heard that besides Zero Wing's alluring Summer and Shadow Sword, even Unyielding Soul's Vice Guild leader Mu Lingshaw and Crimson Emperor's up-and-coming talent Blue Gown were captured. If the 3 guilds don't concede, Starlink will have the Tier 4 NPCs kill these people using a method that will harm their souls. Not only will these people suffer increased death penalties, but they will also enter a weakened state for a long period. There's even a possibility that their accounts will get crippled. Upon hearing the Berserker's words, Shifeng frowned slightly. He never thought that the Secret Hand Association's Tier 4 NPCs would actually interfere in this matter. How bold of Starlink. It dares wag its tail in Zero Wing's territory and even use the 3 guilds' executives as a sacrifice. Shifeng sneered. I know, right? But you have to admit that Starlink is no longer the same as before. Rumors have it that Starlink has 3 Tier 4 players, as well as several superpowers backing it. Now, it even has an NPC force supporting it. In terms of influence on the Eastern continent, even the 5 great superguilds can't compare to Starlink now. The robust berserker nodded. As our White Lion adventurer team is quite well known in the Twin Towers Kingdom, we received an invitation to take part in the crusade. Hence, we decided to come to expand our horizons. Moreover, I heard that the 3 guilds' executives would be making an appearance as well. If negotiations sour, it will definitely lead to the biggest battle in God's domain's history. I see. Shifeng nodded. After listening to the berserker, Shifeng roughly understood what Starlink was planning. Simply put, Starlink was trying to show off its strength with this operation. One of its reasons for doing so was to deal with Zero Wing, Unyielding Soul, and Crimson Emperor. Another reason was to present itself as an existence rivaling the 5 great superguilds. Hence, it had invited so many powers to take part and witness the operation. Friends, Sky Spring City is a mess right now. If you're trying to enter that rumored secret Covenant Tower, I'm afraid you visited the wrong city. Moreover, many superpowers are keeping a close eye on the tower right now. If independent players like ourselves are not careful, we might get treated as one of the 3 guilds members. If that happens, things will get troublesome. Looking at Shifeng's group of 3, the robust berserker cautioned, you might get killed if you're lucky, or captured if you're unlucky. So, it's best to be careful. Thank you for the warning, Shifeng said. After Shifeng finished speaking, he left the teleportation hall with Lifeless Thorn and Solitary 9. After Shifeng's group departed, a male youth from the Silver Lion adventurer team looked at the robust berserker in confusion and asked, "Boss, why did you start talking to those strangers all of a sudden?" "It's nothing. I just thought that those 3 felt extraordinary. The more friends you have, the more options you have in life. It hasn't been easy for our adventurer team to grow to its current state. If we manage to befriend some experts, it will only benefit us," the robust berserker replied, chuckling as he looked at the departing figures of Shifeng's group. "Also, that cloaked swordsman looks quite familiar, though I can't remember who he is at the moment." "Extraordinary? Familiar?" Snickering, the youth said, "Boss, everyone who visits Sky Spring City is at Tier 3. Which one of them isn't an expert? It's also normal to think that you've met someone familiar. After all, everyone looks mostly the same while wearing a black cloak. Honestly, I doubt that those 3 are anything amazing. After all, they came here without even knowing about the crusade. They also didn't receive an invitation from Starlink. They are probably experts from some backwater city. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU experts were a dime a dozen in God's domain nowadays. However, only a small portion of these experts could make a name for themselves. Meanwhile, any of such experts operating in the Twin Towers Kingdom and the neighboring countries would have received an invitation from Starlink. The fact that Shifeng's group didn't proved that they were only ordinary experts unworthy of the White Lion adventurer team's attention. Meanwhile, outside the teleportation hall, "Commander, are we going there now?" Lifeless Thorn asked when he saw that Shifeng wasn't heading for Zero Wing's residence. Starlink has invited experts from all over for a crusade and is even planning on using Zero Wing's executives as sacrifices. "How can I not go there to congratulate it?" Shifeng said, rolling his eyes at Lifeless Thorn. Shifeng made his way to Starlink's magnificent and luxurious residence that stood on the city's main street. Chapter 28:12, Storm Brewing at the Residence. Chapter 28:12, Storm Brewing at the Residence. Sky Spring City, Starlink's residence. At this time, Tier 3 experts were thronging to Starlink's residence, which occupied an area equivalent to 2 sports stadiums. Before Shifeng's group of 3 could arrive at the entrance of Starlink's residence, they saw the players crowding the main street stepping aside and opening a path for a 100-man team. All the members of this 100-man team were at least a level 125, Tier 3 expert. They were also equipped with level 120 dark gold equipment and 2 or 3 pieces of epic equipment. The 2 people walking in the head of this team were even more eye-catching. Not only were they equipped with 6 or more pieces of epic equipment each, but both of them were actually Tier 4 players. One of them was a level 129 Berserker Emperor, while the other was a level 130 Sword Emperor. Just seeing their gear, levels, and tier made the surrounding players sigh in fascination. Crap! Who are these people? Why haven't I seen that guild emblem before? You don't know? They're from a guild called 100 Ghosts, an incredibly mysterious guild that appeared recently. I heard that it has an incredible origin. Although the guild has very few members, every one of them is an expert at Tier 3 or higher. That's right. That man and woman you see leading them are especially amazing. Before they got promoted to Tier 4, they secretly challenged the various superpowers monsters and won 49 out of 49 challenges. I never thought that those two would get promoted to Tier 4 after disappearing from the public eye for some time. If they already had an undefeated record before reaching Tier 4, doesn't this make them nigh invincible now that they've reached Tier 4? The surrounding players held heated discussions over 100 Ghosts' 100-man team. Simultaneously, they couldn't help admiring Starlink. 100 Ghosts was a guild that did as it pleased. It did not show respect to any superpower, yet it had actually accepted the invitation to participate in Starlink's crusade. 100 Ghosts! Shifeng was slightly surprised when he overheard the surrounding players' conversations. In the past, he had heard a little of the guild known as 100 Ghosts. The guild had been an incredibly mysterious existence even back then. Moreover, it had revealed itself to the public 3 years after the game's launch, shortly after the first major system update. The moment this guild made its existence known to the world, it had shaken the entire God's domain. This was because 100 Ghosts had actually had over 30 Tier 4 experts at the time. Back then, even the superpowers only had around 30 Tier 4 experts, with stronger ones having around 40. In addition, after 100 Ghosts made its public appearance, the guild's Tier 4 experts began frenziedly challenging the various superpowers and took the continent by storm. However, for some reason, after 100 Ghosts had finished challenging the various superpowers and proving its strength, it suddenly went silent. The next time it appeared, the guild already had Tier 5 experts and began challenging the 5 great super guilds. Despite having the ability to challenge the 5 great super guilds, 100 Ghosts did not possess even a single guild residence on the main continent. The guild did not compete for resources, either. The only thing the guild did was do combat. This situation had given the 5 great super guilds headaches back then. After all, the 100 Ghosts guild was simply too mysterious. It did not have any roots, so it was impossible to target the guild's base of operations. On the other hand, the number of Tier 5 experts the guild had was not the slightest bit inferior to the 5 great super guilds. In this life, God's Domain's first major system update had taken place 2 years ahead of time. And 100 Ghosts had also appeared 2 years ahead of time. This situation put Shifeng in a reverie. Could they be a guild from an interstellar continent? If it were before he had visited the ancient God's Domain, he probably wouldn't have any idea how such a strange guild could appear out of nowhere. However, after visiting the ancient era, he understood that God's Domain housed players not just from Earth but from the several interstellar continents as well. Just like the ancient God's Domain, 100 Ghosts could be from another version of God's Domain, only this version of God's Domain overlapped with the modern God's Domain much more closely than the ancient God's Domain. Hence, 100 Ghosts could bring so many players to the modern God's Domain. In fact, Shifeng even suspected that the mysterious area Lifeless Thorn and the others fell into previously was 100 Ghosts' home world. However, Lifeless Thorn and the others had been repatriated to the modern God's Domain before they could learn much about this other version of God's Domain. This would also explain why 100 Ghosts' members gave off a similar, but more subdued, sense of abnormality as the ancient God's Domain's players. Another thing that surprised Shifeng was that Starlink had actually managed to connect with 100 Ghosts. This never happened in Shifeng's previous life. Now that so many powers are gathered, I'm afraid Zero Wing will have it tough later. I know, right? The experts from Starlink, Miracle, and the other superpowers aside, just the number of experts gathered here is still more than enough to make Zero Wing suffer. I wonder if Zero Wing even dares come? Starlink has obviously set up a trap. I doubt it will. Since this is Starlink's residence, even if Starlink's experts take action inside, the city's NPC soldiers won't care at all. Zero Wing's experts can only rely on themselves. The players on the main street couldn't help worrying for Zero Wing, Unyielding Soul, and Crimson Emperor as they watched the various powers experts enter Starlink's residence one after another. Although Zero Wing had the home ground advantage in Sky Spring City, how could the three guilds possibly beat more than 20 superpowers when it came to expert count? Not to mention, a bunch of experts from the various major powers had also come to support Starlink. If it came down to a fight, the three guilds wouldn't stand a chance at all. So long as the three guilds' experts dared show up, only death would await them. Yet, if the three guilds did not show up, their reputation would most likely go down the drain. After all, if news of this matter spread, everyone would definitely think that the three guilds have grown timid. If the three guilds didn't even dare accept a challenge, their aim of becoming titans in God's domain was an utter joke. While the Rubberneckers were conversing among themselves, a team of several dozen players suddenly appeared on one end of the main street, their arrival startling the gathered crowd. This was because these players were members of the three guilds. Leading this team of players were none other than Fire Dance, Unyielding Soul, and Illusory Words. Moreover, aside from these three, there was actually another Tier 4 expert with them. The aura this fourth Tier 4 player released was so terrifying that the gathered crowd gasped reflexively. What? Another person from Zero Wing reached Tier 4? That person should be Violet Cloud, right? The feeling she is giving off is completely different from before. Everyone fell into a daze as they looked at the lithe figure standing at the head of the three guilds team. Violet Cloud wore a mage's robe that resembled the starry night sky, and she had her hair tied into a ponytail with a matching ribbon. She looked nothing like a sacred cleric but more like a wise and pure goddess. Her level had even reached 131, which was higher than any other Tier 4 player they had seen thus far. Shortly afterward, Violet Cloud and the other members of the three guilds arrived at the entrance of Starlink's residence. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. As if expecting their arrival, Lu Xingluo and his entourage appeared at the entrance at this time. Compared to Zero Wing's group, Lu Xingluo had 5 Tier 4 players on his side, of which 2 were from Miracle. That was one more Tier 4 player than his side had previously. The new addition was Miracle's sword freak, Miracle Dragon. At this time, Miracle Dragon had already reached level 130, and the oppressive aura he exuded was not much inferior to Violet Cloud's. Looking at Lu Xingluo, Illusory Words said coldly. Lu Xingluo, we've come. You can let them go now. Your courage is praiseworthy, Vice Guild Leader Illusory. However, I've changed my mind. Smiling nonchalantly, Lu Xingluo said, we went to great lengths to capture these people. If we just let them go so easily, wouldn't we superpowers suffer a hit to our reputations? How about we have a match in the residence? If you win, you can take them and leave. If you lose, all of you stay here. Do you three guilds dare accept this challenge? Chapter 28:13, Powerful Showdown. Chapter 28:13, Powerful Showdown. Lu Xingluo spoke in a low tone, but his words echoed throughout the area. Everyone turned reflexively to look at Fire Dance and the others from the three guilds. A match. This is going to be interesting. I wonder if Zero Wing will accept it. If they don't, they'll embarrass themselves in front of the various powers Starlink invited. Although Zero Wing had arrived with great momentum, Starlink's side came prepared as well. Just by looking at the 5 Tier 4 players on Starlink's side, one could tell that Zero Wing held no advantage in this situation at all. Not to mention, the two sides had clashed with each other many times now and suffered severe losses. Zero Wing, Unyielding Soul, and Crimson Emperor had already begun living off their past gains. Their stockpile of weapons and equipment was dwindling, and they were starting to have difficulty compensating their members for their losses. Simply put, only morale was keeping the three guilds alive now. However, if the three guilds refused or lost in the match, morale in the three guilds would plummet. At that time, the performance of the three guilds' members would definitely be affected greatly. Upon realizing this situation, the spectating crowd was in awe of Lu Xingluo's clever move. Originally, everyone thought Starlink was merely trying to get Zero Wing to remove the seal on Skyspring City. However, if Starlink got the 3 guilds' top combatants to remain in Starlink by winning a match, Skyspring City's seal would no longer be a problem. While the spectators were having a quiet discussion among themselves, Fire Dance, Violet Cloud, Unyielding Heart, and Illusory Words briefly exchanged glances. Fine. Fire Dance answered as she looked at Lu Xingluo. What kind of match do you have in mind, Guild Leader Xingluo? Their original plan was to break into Starlink's residence and rescue their captured members. However, now that Starlink had gained another Tier 4 combatant, the risk of their plan had undoubtedly increased. Not to mention, the Secret Hand Association's NPCs might be hiding inside the residence. At that time, they would have to go up against not only those NPCs but also 5 Tier 4 combatants. This would truly put them in a tough spot. After all, anyone capable of reaching Tier 4 was no pushover. In fact, they were among the best in God's domain when it came to combat standards, weapons, equipment, legacies, etc. Simple. Both sides will each select one person for a duel, and we will decide the winner in one match, Lu Xingluo said, smiling. What do you think of this, Commander Fire Dance? Fine. Fire Dance agreed without hesitation. Good. After hearing Fire Dance's response, Lu Xingluo turned to Miracle Dragon and said, our side will have Miracle Dragon represent us. At Lu Xingluo's words, Miracle Dragon leaped into the air and hovered above Starlink's residence. He then looked down quietly at the Zero Wing contingent, evidently prepared for a fight. Big Sis Fire, let me take him on, Violet Cloud volunteered. I haven't gotten a chance to fight against other Tier 4s ever since I reached Tier 4. I don't want to miss out on this. Fire Dance and the others exchanged looks at Violet Cloud's words, hesitation appearing on their faces. The fact that Lu Xingluo dared let Miracle Dragon represent Starlink's side meant that he was confident of victory. Otherwise, he would have had a veteran Tier 4 player take to the field instead. Of course, Lu Xingluo could have made such a decision because the other Tier 4 players had long since exposed their cards during the past few battles. In contrast, Miracle Dragon had only gotten promoted to Tier 4 recently, so the moves he possessed were still unknown to Zero Wing's side. Alright, but be careful. In the end, Fire Dance still nodded and consented to Violet Cloud's request. Their side couldn't afford to lose this battle. However, Zero Wing's veteran Tier 4s faced a similar problem to Starlink's veteran Tier 4s. On the other hand, Violet Cloud was not the slightest bit inferior to the 3 of them in combat standards. Now that she had gotten promoted to Tier 4 as well, it went without saying her strength rivaled theirs. Hence, letting Violet Cloud represent Zero Wing's side wasn't exactly a bad decision. Unyielding Heart and Crimson Emperor did not oppose Fire Dance's decision. Instead, they warned Violet Cloud to stay out of melee range from Miracle Dragon. Otherwise, Miracle Dragon's lightning-quick attacks would devastate a magical class player like Violet Cloud. Afterward, Violet Cloud similarly leaped into the air and hovered 100 yards away from Miracle Dragon. I lost to Gentle Snow last time because of my basic attributes, but you won't be as lucky as Gentle Snow, Miracle Dragon said as he looked at Violet Cloud with a cold and arrogant gaze. Because I will come at you seriously this time. After Miracle Dragon finished speaking, energy rippled out from his body and instantly enveloped the vicinity. Meanwhile, those caught within his mana domain immediately felt their bodies become incomparably heavy. Even Tier 3 players found it difficult to move their bodies. A supergravity domain? Fire Dance frowned subconsciously when she experienced Miracle Dragon's mana domain. This was the first time she had experienced such a powerful mana domain. Although this supergravity domain didn't affect the basic attributes of players, the increased gravity would affect the player's mobility significantly. In fact, Fire Dance estimated that her mobility would be halved because of this mana domain. Needless to say, magical class players that didn't possess much strength would fare even worse in this mana domain. Before Fire Dance and the others could recover from their shock, Miracle Dragon unsheathed the silver greatsword he carried. Immediately, not only did the intensity of the aura he exuded skyrocket, but another ripple of energy spread out from his body. Unlike the earlier energy ripple, This one caused the flowing mana in the air to stagnate impossible. Unyielding Heart couldn't help doubting his eyes as he looked at Miracle Dragon. 2 domains. It was already incredibly difficult for a Tier 4 player to obtain even 1 mana domain. Hence, any Tier 4 player that succeeded in doing so would become a force to be reckoned with even among other Tier 4 players. Now, Miracle Dragon revealed that he actually possessed 2 mana domains. This completely shattered Unyielding Heart's understanding of mana domains. Meanwhile, Lu Xingluo and the others on Starlink's side who were standing at the residence's entrance, smiled when they saw the reactions of Fire Dance and the others from the 3 guilds. Commander Fire Dance, get ready to lose. Miracle Dragon has the supergravity domain and the space freezing domain. He is the absolute bane of magical classes, Lu Xingluo said, smiling calmly as he looked at Fire Dance. Of course, the outcome won't change even if you have someone else take to the field. Under the effects of these 2 mana domains, nobody can defeat Miracle Dragon in single combat. A dual domain wasn't just a simple addition of 2 mana domains. Instead, the effects of the 2 mana domains would overlap and generate exponentially greater results. When Miracle Dragon activated both of his mana domains, he could take on 2 of Starlink's veteran Tier 4s simultaneously and still hold his ground. Meanwhile, the spectators also stirred at this scene. They never thought a person could have 2 mana domains. As expected of the Sword Freak, even Black Flame will most likely have trouble going up against Miracle Dragon. I know, right? Black Flame only managed to stand out because he was lucky to reach Tier 4 before everyone else. But in a situation where both sides are at Tier 4, nobody can tell who is truly the best at the sword without a fight. How can the secret pavilion just arbitrarily label Black Flame the strongest? The Rubberneckers were astonished by Miracle Dragon's abilities. After all, this was the first time any of them had seen a dual domain. One could also easily determine the dual domain's effects just by looking at the Tier 3 players enveloped within it. At this time, these Tier 3 players were already kneeling on the street from the overbearing pressure. This result was much greater than that of the mana domain Shifeng had displayed previously. Commander, should we intervene now? Lifeless Thorn asked as he looked at Shifeng. This dual domain is going to be a tough nut to crack. If it's just Violet alone, I'm afraid. No, we'll continue watching, Shifeng replied, shaking his head and smiling. If we take action now, everyone's going to think that Zero Wing has no capable people to rely on. But that space-freezing domain prevents the use of instantaneous movement. Miracle Dragon is also known for his speed and strength. Her chances of victory are really slim, Lifeless Thorn argued. While he understood what Shifeng was trying to say, Miracle Dragon's dual domain was a perfect counter for magical class players. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU relax. Chuckling, Shifeng looked at Violet Cloud and said, having more mana domains isn't necessarily an advantage. Moreover, Violet's strength is no longer the same as before. As soon as Shifeng finished speaking, they saw Violet Cloud take out Death's Sigh. However, compared to before, the current Death's Sigh released a much more terrifying aura. The instant Violet Cloud wielded it, an aura of death instantly spread into the surroundings. A dual domain might be amazing, but a lone mana domain isn't necessarily inferior. After saying so, Violet Cloud operated her mana body at maximum capacity. The next moment, energy rippled out from her body, instantly pushing back Miracle Dragon's dual domain and preventing it from extending more than 30 yards from Miracle Dragon. The difference between the mana domains of both sides was instantly determined. Chapter 28:14, Astromancer's Might. Chapter 28:14, Astromancer's Might. What's going on? Why did a dual domain lose to a single domain? The various experts looking up at the sky were bewildered when they saw Miracle Dragon's dual domain getting suppressed. They couldn't understand how a single domain could win against a dual domain. After all, the mana and pressure Violet Cloud's mana domain radiated were both weaker than those of Miracle Dragon's dual domain. This is interesting. This little beauty has actually surpassed Miracle Dragon in knowledge and control over mana by a large margin, a handsome youth wearing 100 Ghosts' Guild emblem said, a faint smile appearing on his face as he looked at Violet Cloud. I never thought there would be such a talent in Zero Wing. HMPH. The people here think that just having high basic attributes is sufficient. They don't know that what's most important for Tier 4 players aren't attributes or combat standards but control and understanding over mana, sneered the beautiful woman with short, blue hair standing beside the handsome youth. A mana domain is the result of making an area's mana into one's own. Miracle Dragon can operate the mana of his 2 mana domains only at a basic standard. How can he possibly win against someone with better control over mana? Looking at Violet Cloud with fascination, the handsome youth said, but this little beauty is quite the genius. We can have her join us and become one of our outer supporting members. Abyss. Don't go acting on your old habits again. Don't forget why we came to this continent, the short-haired woman warned. Relax. I know what I'm doing. Nobody on this continent is a match for me. Zero Wing's alliance will crumble for certain this time. Nothing will change even if that black flame shows up. If this little lady wants to protect Zero Wing, she'll have no choice but to beg me. She'll definitely take the bait at that time, the handsome youth said, smiling. The short-haired beauty carrying a battle axe did not refute the youth's statement. After all, it was indeed true that they could keep Zero Wing alive with just a word. While the pair from 100 Ghosts were conversing, Miracle Dragon had taken action. Unfazed by the fact that his dual domain had been suppressed, he flew within 50 yards of Violet Cloud and brandished his great sword. 9 extreme slashes. Tier 4 legacy skill, Light Shatterer. 9 sword lights tore through space and instantly appeared around Violet Cloud. Moreover, as if to prove that Miracle Dragon had reached the domain realm already, the 9 sword lights moved around Violet Cloud like a bunch of lively monkeys, their attack trajectories unpredictable. Facing this tricky move, Violet Cloud flicked her staff and activated Blink, instantly appearing 30 yards away and dodging the 9 sword lights in the nick of time. Boom! A moment after Violet Cloud used Blink, the 9 sword lights converged on her original location and exploded, transforming the area within a 20-yard radius into an empty void. The power of this attack practically rivaled that of superior mythic monsters of the same level. However, before Violet Cloud could catch her breath, several more sword lights appeared around her, to which she responded by using Blink again. This process repeated itself over and over, the sword lights hounding Violet Cloud like her shadow. This scene dumbfounded the spectating crowd. After all, at this time, Miracle Dragon looked more like a ranged player than a melee player. Every time he brandished his great sword, several sword lights would appear around Violet Cloud. Despite the distance between the two players, it was as if Miracle Dragon were right beside Violet Cloud. Miracle Dragon really isn't holding back. 1,000 Miles, who was standing at the entrance, burst into laughter as he watched the fight in the sky. At this rate, the fight will end in less than 10 seconds. Miracle Dragon was a magic swordsman. His class perfectly combined magic with the sword. The class was proficient in melee combat as well as ranged combat. While it was indeed amazing that Violet Cloud managed to render Miracle Dragon's dual domain useless, thanks to the Light Shatterer skill, Miracle Dragon could still thoroughly exhibit the might of his godly fast attacks. You might have a lot of movement skills, but while my Light Shatterer skill is active, it won't matter where you run to, so just surrender obediently, Miracle Dragon said, smirking as he watched Violet Cloud constantly dodging his attacks. Most people might expect him to be at a disadvantage when going up against magical class players, but he was a magic swordsman. It didn't matter whether he fought at close quarters or range. He was proficient in both forms of combat. Meanwhile, Light Shatterer had a 3-minute duration. Even if Violet Cloud had many movement skills, she definitely wouldn't have enough to last 3 minutes. And once she ran out of movement skills, all she could do was wait for death. Thank you for your warning. Looking at the arrogant magic swordsman, Violet Cloud smiled faintly and said, I might not be able to dodge them if I'm alone, but what if there are multiple copies of myself? After saying so, Violet Cloud swung her staff and summoned several dozen identical copies of herself within her vast starry domain. Then, the figures of Violet Cloud and her copies turned blurry, becoming indistinguishable from one another. Doppelgangers. Miracle Dragon was momentarily startled. No, their auras are too weak to be doppelgangers. They should only be illusions, and there should only be one physical body. Watch me break this move of yours. Miracle Dragon began brandishing his great sword wildly. Unlike before, his sword lights no longer converged on a single point. Instead, they scattered all around Violet Cloud's starry domain, leaving empty voids wherever they passed and turning the starry domain into a place of death. After the series of rampant attacks, black voids filled the starry domain, which covered a 300-yard radius, this outcome thoroughly demonstrating the power of a Tier 4 magic swordsman. You refuse to come out even in death. Miracle Dragon was puzzled as he looked at the dark void before him. His attacks had left no corner untouched. While Tier 4 players could indeed survive inside the empty void, they could do so only for a short period. They would still die if they lingered. As soon as Miracle Dragon finished speaking, however, Violet Cloud came strolling out of the black void entirely unscathed. It was evident that Miracle Dragon's rampant assault just now did not affect her. She avoided everything. Miracle Dragon was surprised by this scene. He knew the speed of his attacks very well. Only by using skills like Blink could magical class players dodge them. Relying solely on physical movements for evasion was impossible. Tanking his attacks would also be utterly foolish, and he would be more than glad to see Violet Cloud try. After all, her defense was bound to slip up against his swift and violent attacks. Nevertheless, Violet Cloud remained unscathed. Even her robe was intact. This proved that Violet Cloud had actually dodged all his sword lights. Amazing. I didn't even have time to cast my spells while dealing with those fast attacks. Thankfully, my starry domain just so happens to counter you. Otherwise, this really would be a tough fight. Violet Cloud sighed ruefully as she looked at the dark space around her. While the doppelgangers she summoned might seem like illusions, they were, in a certain sense, real. This was because she could freely shuttle her real body between these doppelgangers. This ability was much stronger than her blink skill. Moreover, while this ability cost concentration and mana to use, it didn't have a cooldown. And once her control over this ability improved, she could potentially summon thousands of copies of herself within her starry domain. Little girl, you're as arrogant as your guild leader. I refuse to believe you can dodge my attacks forever, Miracle Dragon said. He then held up his great sword in preparation for another round of attacks. However, before Miracle Dragon could brandish his weapon, shadow blades emerged from the dark void behind Violet Cloud, numbering 600. Miracle Dragon, did you think I was hiding in the void just to dodge your attacks? Chuckling softly, Violet Cloud said, I spent a long time preparing to deal with you. Now, let me see how you block these 600 shadow blade. As soon as Violet Cloud finished speaking, the 600 shadow blades carrying devastating power began raining down on Miracle Dragon like a hail of bullets. Miracle Dragon knew that there was no way he could dodge them all. Immediately, he activated his Berserk skill, drastically increasing his basic attributes and doubling his attack speed. The next moment, he brandished his great sword, blocking the shadow blades one after another in rapid succession. Boom! 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 A shadow blade would get sent flying away every time Miracle Dragon swung his great sword. However, under Violet Cloud's control, these shadow blades would quickly correct their trajectories and attack him once more. The space above Starlink's residence transformed into a dark void, the shockwaves of the battle spreading throughout Sky Spring City. Rather than a clash between players, the duel between Violet Cloud and Miracle Dragon looked more like a clash between monsters. From watching this battle, the Tier 3 players present thoroughly understood how insignificant they were in front of Tier 4 players. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. Despite Miracle Dragon's best efforts, there were just too many shadow blades. Moreover, Violet Cloud was also constantly making subtle adjustments to her attack patterns. As a result, roughly 20 seconds later, Miracle Dragon finally slipped up, and one shadow blade penetrated his defense. Just one hit took away 1/4 of Miracle Dragon's HP. Moreover, within a few more seconds, he slipped up 3 more times. The next moment, the clash in midair came to an abrupt halt, and Miracle Dragon's eyes closed reluctantly as his body fell into the compound of Starlink's residence. Only Violet Cloud and her 600 shadow blades remained hovering in the air, the frightening aura they released instilling fear into everyone. Guild leader Lu Xingluo, you can release our people now. Chapter 28:15, How bold of you. Chapter 28:15, How bold of you. At Violet Cloud's words, Lu Xingluo's complexion turned ashen. Never did Lu Xingluo think that Miracle Dragon would lose. Moreover, the man had lost so miserably. Now, not only did Lu Xingluo fail to humiliate Zero Wing, but the morale on his side had even suffered a hit. This situation put him at a loss as to how to respond to Violet Cloud. Lu Xingluo wasn't the only one taken aback by this outcome. The various major powers were similarly stunned beyond belief. Everyone present could clearly tell that Miracle Dragon was monstrously powerful, yet Violet Cloud had actually displayed even greater strength. At this time, they even started to think that Violet Cloud could take on 2 or 3 Tier 4 experts simultaneously and still hold the upper hand. So, this is Zero Wing's strength. Amazing. With this, Starlink and the various superpowers will have to act more humbly. From how leisurely Violet Cloud had defeated Miracle Dragon, it was evident she still had strength to spare. This meant that even though Zero Wing's side had 1 Tier 4 expert less than Starlink's side, the latter still wouldn't hold any advantages. Beautifully done, Unyielding Heart praised as he looked up at Violet Cloud. Now that Starlink's side has 1 less Tier 4, even if Lu Xingluo goes back on his word, we still have a much greater chance of rescuing our people. Illusory Words nodded in agreement with Unyielding Heart. This duel held great importance for both sides. If Lu Xingluo handled this matter poorly, he would become the laughingstock of God's domain. After all, Lu Xingluo had overreached himself. He had actually planned to rely on this opportunity to elevate Starlink into an existence on par with the 5 great super guilds. Only, his grand plan had already been foiled right at the very first step. If he weren't standing in public right now, Lu Xingluo would have most likely spat out blood already. When everyone thought Lu Xingluo was going to lose his mind, the man actually smiled. Good. Very good. As expected of one of Zero Wing's peak experts. Your strength is truly astonishing, Lu Xingluo said, chuckling as he looked up at Violet Cloud. Fine. We'll let your people go. Guild leader, Sword Demon, who had also reached Tier 4, was stunned by Lu Xingluo's words. He never thought that Lu Xingluo would release Zero Wing's people so decisively. They'll grow even more fearless if we let their people go. It doesn't matter, Lu Xingluo said as he glanced at Sword Demon nonchalantly. Release them. Sword Demon had no choice but to release the 3 guilds' captured members. The next moment, Alluring Summer, Shadow Sword, Mu Lingshaw, Blue Gown, and several other players were released from Starlink's guild hall. From the time they emerged from the building until they walked out of the residence's entrance, none of Starlink's or the various Superpowers members stopped them. His releasing them without a fight. Unyielding Heart was stunned when he saw Mu Lingshaw and the others free. Honestly, Unyielding Heart didn't believe any of the words Lu Xingluo said before. To his disbelief, Lu Xingluo had actually gone through with his promise and released the captured players without a fight. However, as soon as the bindings on Alluring Summer and the others were removed, Alluring Summer shouted, "Run! Commander, you guys need to get away fast. It's a trap." Unfortunately, as soon as Alluring Summer finished speaking, a 3-fold magic array suddenly appeared in the sky above Starlink's residence. The magic array instantly expanded and covered a 1,000-yard radius. Apart from Starlink's and the various Superpowers members, everyone caught within the barrier felt their bodies growing heavier. Even Tier 4 players like Unyielding Heart found their basic attributes falling by 30%. Run! You think you can run away today? Lu Xingluo sneered as he looked at the members of Zero Wing, Unyielding Soul, and Crimson Emperor. I've released your people, so don't say I didn't abide by our agreement. However, whether you can leave this place alive is another matter altogether. Oh, by the way, this magic barrier is a master barrier. Let alone you Tier 4s, even a superior mythic monster can't break out from it. At the same time as Lu Xingluo finished speaking, 3 NPCs flew out of Starlink's residence and looked down at the 3 guilds members from the air. With the appearance of these 3 NPCs, Violet Cloud's starry domain was instantly overwhelmed by a much stronger and violent mana domain. As a result, her starry domain contracted to only 50 yards away from herself. Meanwhile, upon seeing these 3 NPCs, everyone present gasped involuntarily. Victor Palomi, Secret Hand Association Elder, Tier 4 Great Wizard, Level 160 HP 180 million, Claire Saviron, Secret Hand Legion Vice Commander, Tier 4 Sky Knight, Level 160 HP 330 million, Melt Cabrera, Secret Hand Legion Commander, Tier 4 Elemental Hunter, Level 162 HP 270 million. 3 Tier 4 NPCs? How is this possible? The various major powers members gaped in shock at these 3 NPCs. Although they knew that Starlink had worked together with the Secret Hand Association to capture the 3 guilds' executives, they had thought that only 1 Tier 4 NPC was aiding Starlink. Now, 3 Tier 4 NPCs had appeared. Their combined combat power was enough to destroy even Sky Spring City. Melt Cabrera, an elderly man apparently in his 50s who carried a crystalline bow, turned to Lu Xingluo and said, "Guild leader Xingluo, you've done well this time. Our association will help you take control of the Secret Covenant Tower as agreed." "Thank you, Commander Melt." Lu Xingluo beamed at Melt Cabrera's words. Lu Xingluo's goal since the very beginning had been the 3 guilds' Tier 4 members. The main reason he had Miracle Dragon partake in a duel was to create a distraction while the Secret Hand Association set up the magic barrier. After all, setting up such a powerful barrier would create powerful mana fluctuations. Only a duel between 2 Tier 4 players could conceal these mana fluctuations. Hence, Lu Xingluo never really cared whether Miracle Dragon won or lost the duel. How vicious of Lu Xingluo. He was planning to wipe out the 3 guilds' top combatants all along. It seems Zero Wing's side is finished. A force of 3 Tier 4 NPCs is basically unstoppable in the Twin Towers Kingdom. At this time, everyone already understood that this was a trap Starlink set up for the 3 guilds. So long as the 3 guilds' top combatants got annihilated here, the 3 guilds would be finished. They would no longer have the ability to resist Starlink and the various superpowers. The complexions of the 3 guilds' members darkened when they saw this situation. How is this possible? How did Lu Xingluo recruit the help of so many Tier 4 NPCs? Unyielding Heart couldn't help despairing as he looked at the 3 Tier 4 NPCs in the air. According to the information they obtained, only 1 Tier 4 NPC had been present when Mu Lingshaw and the others were captured. They had originally planned for him and Illusory Words to work together to pin down this Tier 4 NPC, while Violet Cloud and Fire Dance went up against Starlink's Tier 4 players. Now, the number of Tier 4 NPCs they had to face had tripled. Moreover, they were even caught inside a master barrier. They couldn't escape even if they wanted to. While the 3 guilds members were at a loss as to what to do, Melt Cabrera glanced at them. "Capture Zero Wing's members. Kill everyone else using soul attacks. I want to let Black Flame know the consequences of provoking the Secret Hand Association." Melt Cabrera commanded the 2 people beside him. In response, Elder Victor Palomi chuckled and said, "Rest assured, Commander Melt, none of Zero Wing's members will escape today." Melt Cabrera's words stunned the spectating crowd. These NPCs are here for Zero Wing? Crap. What did Zero Wing do to have an NPC force aim for their lives? At this time, let alone the various major powers, even Unyielding Heart and Illusory Words were stunned. An NPC force had actually mobilized such a powerful party just to take revenge on Shifeng? However, before Unyielding Heart and Illusory Words could react to this piece of information, the 3 NPCs made their move, splitting up and charging at Violet Cloud and Fire Dance. "Zero Wing, this is the consequence of your sins." Lu Xingluo burst into maniacal laughter when he saw the 3 NPCs taking action. "I didn't even do anything this time." Previously, Lu Xingluo had still felt quite troubled by the 3 guilds' resistance. However, Shifeng had offended the Secret Hand Association on Dragonheart Island, which, in turn, prompted the association to seek a partnership with Lu Xingluo. He had nearly gone crazy from joy back then. Now that 3 of the association's Tier 4 NPCs were taking action, There was no way Zero Wings members could escape. Now, all he had to do was wait for Zero Wings' destruction and take over Zero Wings' possessions. However, just as the three NPCs were about to reach Fire Dance and her companions, who were prepared to fight to the death, a sword light suddenly appeared out of nowhere on the battlefield. This lightning-fast sword light cut straight at Melt Cabrera, who led the charge against Zero Wings members. However, Melt Cabrera was no ordinary Tier 4 NPC. Quickly responding to the attack, he used his crystalline bow as a melee weapon and struck the approaching sword light. Boom! An explosion occurred, and space within a radius of several dozen yards shattered. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. The Elemental Hunter went flying over 100 yards away, a damage exceeding 1 million appearing above his head. Secret Hand Association, how bold of you. I didn't bother picking a fight with you in Dragonheart City, yet you actually have the gall to come and pick a fight in my territory. It seems you people are tired of living, just like Sabrid. Before anyone could react to the sudden attack, a cold voice echoed throughout the battlefield. Everyone turned to the voice's origin, curious to find out who had sent Melt Cabrera flying. The next moment, what entered everyone's eyes was a cloaked man walking out of the crowd. The man wielded a golden sword decorated with crimson runes, and his frightening aura made them feel as if the god of death had descended onto the battlefield. Black Flame. Chapter 28:16. Nobody is leaving. Chapter 28:16. Nobody is leaving. Everyone couldn't help doubting their eyes when they saw the cloaked man. After all, Melt Cabrera was a level 162, Tier 4 NPC. Although he was only a Tier 4 ranger, which wasn't a strength-oriented class, he still possessed a massive advantage in terms of levels. He simply wasn't an existence current players could go up against. Nevertheless, Shifeng had sent the Elemental Hunter flying with one hit. How frightening was his strength! His actually that Black Flame? Standing in the spectating crowd, the robust man from the Silver Lion Adventurer team was astonished when he discovered Shifeng's identity. His team members were similarly stunned. They never imagined that the stranger their commander decided to befriend would actually be a big shot. Moreover, it was even a big shot capable of shaking the entire god's domain. Guild leader Fire Dance and the others were also surprised when they saw Shifeng approaching them. They hadn't thought that Shifeng had already returned. Brother Black Flame, you've really made us wait. Unyielding Heart revealed a bitter smile when he saw Shifeng. Although not much time had passed since they parted ways at the ruined mountain range, it felt like months and years had gone by on their side as the pressure they faced from the various superpowers increased by the day. Fortunately, their peak experts had found several Tier 4 legacy lands while exploring level 130 maps. As a result, their three guilds managed to produce 3 Tier 4 players quickly, instantly alleviating the pressure they faced at the Twin Towers Kingdom by a large margin. They were also continuously obtaining complete Tier 3 legacies from the Secret Covenant Tower, which allowed their guilds to produce Tier 3 players rapidly. As a result, their 3 guilds had managed to last until today, albeit by the skin of their teeth. Shifeng's return had undoubtedly increased their staying power. When Illusory Words saw Shifeng, she, too, heaved a deep sigh of relief. They had been fighting long and hard just to endure until this moment. Meanwhile, Shifeng's appearance also caused a stir among the members of Starlink's faction. None of them had expected Shifeng to reappear in such a sudden and powerful manner. Black Flame, you're finally willing to show yourself. Lu Xingluo laughed as he looked at Shifeng. I've been waiting for a long time. Today, I'll let you see Zero Wing perish before your eyes. Everyone, attack. In truth, Lu Xingluo was slightly surprised by Shifeng's arrival. He never thought that Shifeng would be able to return from the sealed Dragonheart City so quickly. Lu Xingluo had originally planned to use the annihilation of Fire Dance and the others to force Shifeng to come forward. Now, he no longer had to trouble himself. As soon as Lu Xingluo finished speaking, Sword Demon, Wind Demon, and Tengu, who had all reached Tier 4, moved to surround Zero Wing's members. Only, shortly after the trio exited the residence's entrance, 2 figures intercepted them. You'll need to beat the 2 of us first before you proceed. Lifeless Thorn said as he grabbed the spear slung on his back and swept it at the three enemies before him. At this time, Lifeless Thorn and Solitary 9 stopped concealing their life auras. 2 more Tier 4 auras spread across the battlefield, stunning Sword Demon's group. 2 more Tier 4s. How many Tier 4s does Zero Wing have? The various major powers exclaimed in surprise when they sensed Lifeless Thorn's and Solitary 9's auras. At this stage of the game, Tier 4 players were still as rare as a phoenix's feather. A superpower would be fortunate to have even one Tier 4 player. Yet, based on what they could see now, Zero Wing actually had 5 Tier 4 players already. Even the 5 great super guilds didn't have such a force yet. You people from Zero Wing are indeed capable. After glancing at Lifeless Thorn and Solitary 9, Lu Xingluo turned to Shifeng and sneered, "Unfortunately, all of you are inside a master barrier right now. Even if you have more Tier 4s on your side, you still don't have a chance at victory." Upon hearing this, the various onlookers snapped out of their daze and very much agreed with Lu Xingluo's words. "March, you go as well," 1,000 Miles commanded as he looked at Silent March. "Make sure Black Flame doesn't leave this place alive. We'll be in trouble afterward, otherwise." "Yes, sir." Nodding, Silent March took out her staff and joined Sword Demon's trio. Seeing that Silent March, a Tier 4 necromancer, was taking action as well, the spectating players sighed subconsciously. Although Starlink's side was still outnumbered, it had the help of a master barrier and 3 Tier 4 NPCs. Zero Wing's side stood no chance at all. However, before Silent March could arrive before Lifeless Thorn and Solitary 9, Shifeng suddenly slashed at the sky. World Breaker. The next moment, a dazzling brilliance shot into the sky and instantly penetrated the magic barrier. Subsequently, the barrier shattered, and the overwhelming pressure Zero Wing's members felt disappeared. "What master barrier?" Looking at Lu Xingluo, Shifeng asked calmly, "Do you mean this broken thing?" At Shifeng's words, silence enveloped the entire battlefield. Lu Xingluo, in particular, was utterly thunderstruck as he looked at the dissipating barrier. Impossible. Even a superior mythic monster would have a difficult time breaking this barrier. How could he just? At this time, Lu Xingluo felt as if he was having a nightmare. Either that or the heavens were playing a trick on him. "Guild leader, are you still just a Tier 4 player?" At this time, let alone Lu Xingluo and the various Superpowers members, even Fire Dance and the others gaped in shock at this scene. This was a barrier capable of trapping superior mythic monsters. Yet, Shifeng had destroyed it with one slash. Not good. They can run away now that the barrier is broken. Reacting to the situation quickly, 1,000 Miles looked at Lu Xingluo and urged, "Guild leader Xingluo, we need to figure out a plan fast. If a Tier 4 player wanted to escape, even Tier 4 NPCs would have trouble stopping them. Meanwhile, if their faction failed to capture Zero Wing's members alive, they would have a much harder time dealing with the 3 guilds afterward." On the other hand, Unyielding Heart and Illusory Words breathed out a sigh of relief at this situation. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. With the magic barrier gone, so long as they scattered and fled, the 3 Tier 4 NPCs wouldn't be able to capture them. Moreover, they were still inside Sky Spring City. If the 3 Tier 4 NPCs caused a commotion, Sky Spring City's Tier 4 magistrate would definitely intervene. At that time, the magistrate would be able to pin down at least one of Secret Hand's NPCs. However, before Lu Xingluo and 1,000 Miles could issue commands, Shifeng jumped into the air above Starlink's residence and scanned the crowd beneath him. This situation confused the various spectating players. They couldn't understand why Shifeng had approached Starlink's residence instead of running away. "Run away?" Looking at 1,000 Miles, Shifeng laughed and said, "Do you think you're the only ones capable of summoning Tier 4 NPCs? Nobody is leaving today. All of you will stay here." After saying so, Shifeng took out 2 Summon Guard scrolls from his bag and activated them. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories,